placed here at Mosquito Inlet. And joining us to tell that story is the lead docent for the Ponce Inlet Lighthouse and Museum there in Ponce Inlet, Florida. Please join me in welcoming John Mann.
This is Mosquito Inlet. This is Mosquito Inlet in 1856, according to the Coastal Survey. By this time, we had 2 beacons here. Of course, they were the 1835 lighthouse and also the beacon, the Turnbull beacon, on the north shore of the inlet. Here's Mosquito County, greatly reduced. Some maps, including this map over here, I think it is the Tucker map, has almost all of Florida as Mosquito County. So that's kind of interesting. All right. Time travelers, 197 years we're going back. This is Mosquito County in 1827. From up north of Lake George to Middle River, how big was Mosquito when it was stretched? All the way through, it was at least 21,000 square miles larger, and larger than the 9 states of the current Union. In fact, the whole east coast of the United States was known as, or the whole east coast of Florida was known as Los Mosquitos. Covered the present counties of Volusia, Brevard, Indian River, St. Lucie, Martin, Seminole, Osceola, Orange, Lake, Polk, and Palm Beach County. Ah, yeah. The same wild-haired, dead president and conqueror who's on the $20 bill, but probably more famous, you kids are from the 50s, Johnny Horton's song. No? The Battle of New Orleans?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. He was our governor, the Florida territorial governor, to take complete possession of all Florida after that little dust-up we had with Spain in 1821. He was also concerned about commerce, and so what he did was he split Florida into 2, east and west. This is a portrait by Matthew Brady, which is kind of neat. Here's Mosquito Lagoon, all right, which is the only thing that's still called Mosquito. We're getting to be sissies, I don't know. Anyway, here's the lagoon. A lagoon is technically a shallow body of water separated from a larger body or landform, a real barrier island, etc., etc., etc. I'm not going to bore you with that. We know that Mosquito Lagoon is the only geographic area which still bears the name Mosquito. And fishermen don't care where they get their catch, as long as it's tasty. Early days of our country, the second treasurer of the United States. Why was Hamilton appointed treasurer? Makes a lot of sense because he was brilliant. But why did the Treasury Department assume control of lighthouses and the building of lighthouses? Until 1939, by the way, the Treasury Department was in charge of lighthouses. Any good thoughts?
Trade. Tax revenue from ships?
Excise taxes, port fees, and so on. Yeah. Here's the second treasurer of the United States. He's the second one. He becomes Secretary of the Treasury. He actually kept control after Hamilton for nearly all of his 2 terms, and he's responsible for the movement of lighthouses, very much so, to the War of 1812. Here's the bad guy, and he looks like the bad guy. He's the 5th auditor, or the 5th Undersecretary of the Treasury. And he is in charge of lighthouses for 40 years. He is a bean counter. He knows nothing about engineering. He knows nothing about surveying. He knows nothing about nautical nautical anything, but he's the go-to man. He's the guy that says yes or no. He's the guy who hires the people who build our lighthouses till the 1850s. He's not bad, he's just ignorant. All right, ignorant of what needs to be done as far as this. His name is Stephen Pleasanton. He is a certified, genuine American hero. When the British come in 1812 and 1813 and they burn Washington, he goes around to the Treasury Department where all those documents and pictures and signed copies of this, that, and the other thing, and he puts them in a cart and he takes off to Maryland and he hides them and literally saves the Declaration of Independence, the first copy of the Constitution, all of those things. However, 10 years later, he's built about 300 lighthouses, and many of them fall down. Why do they fall down? Because this is his major employer. This is the man who built the 1835 lighthouse. This is the man who copied a French light instrument that was so poor, but it was immediately adopted because, unfortunately, Pleasanton, the guy I introduced you before, this is his go-to guy. His name is Winslow Lewis. Now, before I go any further, are any of you members of the Winslow Lewis organization, the Winslow Lewis? There is an organization. One of my colleagues from the Ponce Inlet Lighthouse said something not very complimentary about Winslow Lewis, and he got letters, all right, from the organization. So I'm not going to get into trouble here. All I'm going to say is he was a ship's captain who built America's lighthouses for 30 years and did a terrible job because he knew nothing, as I said, about engineering, but he was Pleasanton's go-to guy because Pleasanton didn't know anything about engineering, and as a result, well, remember the 1835 lighthouse? Didn't last long, did it? It should have, but it was... Okay. Failed ship's captain. Oh, yes, let's talk about this, too. It is going to be one of, in most lighthouses, including the 1835 lighthouse, it is going to be one of 14 lamps on a chandelier that is maintained by the lighthouse keeper at night. Okay? He's going to be filling the oil in the reservoir there. He's going to be cleaning the circular, supposedly mirrored circular thing there. And he's going to be aiming and keeping the light, the actual physical flame, to the right measurement so that he's going to get optimum amount of light out of that glass. First of all, the glass is like Coke bottle glass. It is not the kind of glass that really should be, which would be magnetic or would be pure. Okay? Second thing is that keepers didn't understand these regulations. Third thing is the soot would tarnish the reflective surface almost immediately. Okay? But this was his instrument, and he got the patent, and he got the agreement, and so this is what lit the 1835 lighthouse. If they ever delivered the oil, which they did not. Okay? What happens to all of this? This is the, here, let me go here. This would be what you would find in the lantern room of a lighthouse built in the 1840s or 1850s. It would be literally a chandelier with the reflective surface behind and then a piece of glass in the front. Light travels in waves. It has to be harnessed somehow. There's nothing to harness the light, so about 75% of the light waves are escaping out through between the mirrored surface and the glass. So it's perfectly useless. The modern Fresnel lens is invented at about this time, 1820. Pleasantrin says, oh, it's a good concept, but it's too damned expensive. So we continue to the 1850s using the contraptions that you saw there. Meanwhile, Europe and the world is using the Fresnel lens. I mean, they are using the Fresnel lens. Our ship's captains are going to Europe. They're saying, we can see the darn light 15 miles away. We get back to Massachusetts, we can't see anything. What's wrong with this picture? But again, they hold on. You know, people who hold on and hold on and hold on, well, that's what they're doing. Now, why is it especially dangerous here at this inlet?
Shifting sand.
We're so shallow.
Yeah.
To 7 miles out. Up in Ormond, you can walk out 200 yards and your feet will barely be wet at low tide. That isn't all over. Our shipping lanes are about 8 miles out. You never see them. You're on the beach and, you know, you're doing your beach thing and so on, and you see the shrimp boats go by and you see the pleasure boats and so on. Well, the traffic. This is the I-95 of ships traffic out there. Everything that's coming around the Horn, around the, you know, Cape Florida, and then going up from all over. This is a view of Mosquito Inlet. The image you see is the unpredictable and dangerous inlet that it is. In the 1930s, it was a relatively busy place. Yeah, lumber, agriculture, citrus, sugar cane, a lot of lumber going in and out for shipbuilding. The Barrier Island, even on our Barrier Island. Okay? Florida becomes a territory of the United States in 1821, and the earlier plantations really took off. Revitalizing the commercial and political pressure increases, and what we get now is entrepreneurs, a fellow by the name of Heister and his partner Henry Kruger have contracted or constructed for themselves a sugar mill, a steam-operated sugar mill and a sawmill. A huge 600 industrial site in New Smyrna. What the plant did was to extract the juice from the sugar cane, and oh my, the manager of the operation was another familiar New Smyrna name, John Dwight Sheldon. The whole process used slave labor. Unfortunately, a few years later, they, along with many other New Smyrnians, have a terrible Christmas day in 1835. When the band of Seminole Indians pillaged the plantation after Sheldon, his family, and the residents fled to the mainland across the Halifax, and afterwards the machinery is removed to the Dunlawton sugar mill. However, in good or better earlier times, in the 1830s, Kaiser wrote a memorial signed by 38 of your great-great-great-grandfathers and grandfathers actually, to petition for a lighthouse at this inlet. We in the Florida Territory are suffering considerable privations and difficulties in the trade to this quarter. In consequences, there being no lighthouses at Mosquito Inlet, and we are requesting a lighthouse be erected there. Took 4 years. Congress meets in the above structure there on Capitol Hill, appropriates a sum of $11,000 for an inlet on the south side of the inlet. And guess who was appointed the contractor? Winslow Lewis. He built one. This first Mosquito Inlet station was on 2 dunes close to the water of the inlet. The location was actually selected not by Winslow Lewis, but by the collector of customs for St. Augustine, who had authorized a purchase of a few acres, then assigned that task as supervision and inspector of customs, a fellow by the name of David Dunham. I think we have those names, street names, somewhere in town here. Okay, the lighthouse tower would be hard brick, plastered with Roman cement, whitewashed twice, and would be 45 foot tall. Not gonna be seen by nothing. As the lighthouse at Mosquito was considered a harbor light, primarily for the safety of local navigation through the inlet. It was constructed on a high dune. The keeper's residence was constructed next to it. Another part of the station was a 1-story, 8-foot high, 34-foot long by 20-foot wide, 2-room keeper's dwelling, with a fireplace in each room, a separate 4x5 privy, and a finished stone cellar under the residence. I don't have enough time, and you don't have enough time in your lives for me to read all of this, except that it was completed the month of February 1835, but as no oil ever came, it was never lighted. A high gale in October, the sand around the foundation was washed away, owing to our Indian wars. Oh yeah, Coochie, wildcat. You got to get this mental picture in your head. One of the militiamen who was in the area wrote that he spied wildcat on a white stallion. He was naked, war paint all over his body, his hair braided out, and so on. I'd run like hell too. I mean, but yes, he's the current bad guy in this. What does he do? But he attacks New Smyrna, beats up a couple of houses and so on, and then he decides, well, this isn't interesting. I hear that there's some kind of governmental location down at the inlet. I think I'm going to take my boys down there and see what we can do to that. And, of course, they find the unoccupied lighthouse, the unoccupied residence of the keeper, and they have a good time. They can't burn it. They do burn the wooden door, the front door. They attempt to burn the steps. They don't do well with that, but the glass, oh boy, in the lantern room, surrounding the lantern room, break all of the glass. Now, thankfully, the keeper at the time, here's another New Smyrna name, William Williams. Keeper at the time is smart enough to know this is not going to have a good ending here. So what he does is he buries the reflectors from the light, because they're shiny and bright, and they would be attractive to Kawakuchi and his Indian friends. So he buries them. Unfortunately, during all of the storm period that precedes this in March of 1835, washing and so on, the sand is missing and the sand is gone, and the reflectors show up. So it is told, now who knows if this is accurate, but it is told that wildcat wears either one or two of the reflectors as part of his battle get-up, all right, during one engagement with the Florida militia, which proves that he's not too bright. Why? Because, you know, hey, yeah, wear a reflector. Yeah, perfect. Oh, yeah, can I? Oh, man, yeah, think about that. Not too bright. Okay. This is a site map identifying the possible site of the 1835 lighthouse at that time. It was back enough from the inlet, but unfortunately close enough to the ocean. Now, the site supervisor, Dunham, is unhappy with the position and writes a letter of protest to the Secretary of the Treasury, who passes it on to Pleasanton, who passes it on to, and they do nothing about it. Dunham feared he would get the blame if anything did go wrong, and he did. But this is an early hand-drawn site map of the location of the 1835 lighthouse. Has the land changed and the inlets? Oh my goodness, yes. But this is what we have to go. And here is the lighthouse, the 1835 lighthouse. It actually came in at $7,494. It was a 45-foot tower, and the residence for the keeper was 12 by 24. Another figure closer to the truth is probably $10,400. It was paid to Lewis, that's how much Lewis made. On February 2nd, 1835, Colonel Thomas Dunham wrote a letter to Rodman. On the 17th, Rodman also wrote to Pleasanton and said that Dunham certifies that he has diligently attended and carefully examined the workmanship of the building, and the materials were good, and the workmanship faithfully performed. This is from the north side of the inlet. It's a sketch of the perspective. Rodman proposes that William B. Williams be the first keeper. William B. Williams' father owned a large plantation with slaves on the Halifax River. That was an indigo plantation. The manor house today is the site of the Daytona Beach City Hall. That's how big the plantation was. Williams' main qualification to be the keeper was that he had served as a captain of a ship and a harbor pilot, not to our inlet. He'd be paid $450 a year, housed in the keeper's residence. He'd be adequately compensated. The lighthouse was constructed. All that was needed was the oil, which, by the way, was never. Someone forgot to order the spermaceti whale oil. Through the summer of 1835, the shiny new light was dark. Come September 1835, a hurricane did some minor damage. Swirling currents seriously eroded the shoreline on the south side of the inlet. All of that is recorded. Several panes of glass were broken out from the lantern. Then came October. This is a model at the lighthouse, at the Ponce Inlet Lighthouse of the 1835 lighthouse. On October 28th, a severe gale from the northeast causes the tide to rise so much that the bank on which the residence, the keeper's residence, literally the residence was washed away. The brick house itself was crushed. Williams and his family survived, lost all their possessions, everything was gone. October 1835, a 7-day storm hits the tower, washes away its 4-foot brick foundation. No one can really tell whether there was a foundation. In other instances, there were no foundations to some of Winslow Lewis's towers. 1835 was, of course, the year of severe consequences to Florida. The Second Seminole War began. Most histories of the war talk about the massacre at Dade's, Major Dade and his men. However, of course, the band of hostiles. This is a drawing of Wildcat, or Calcucci. He's pretty well known all during the Seminole War. In April of 1836, a 6-day storm completely takes out the dune and the tower. Oil is never delivered. The keeper's residence goes first. Keeper and practically everybody in Central Florida is now in St. Augustine, where there's a big fort. Okay, everyone goes at the reported sightings of Wildcat and his band of merry elves, at Christmas time and so on. With the local militia driven back by the Indians and the continued hostilities, engineers, no one is going to come. No one is going to come back to Central Florida until this thing is over. And it's not over. In 1842, there is a proposal. Remember I was talking about the two lights? Okay, that was very common. The 1842, there's a proposal to put a light on the north and a light on the south. That goes absolutely nowhere. Goes to, of course, the Civil War, with all sorts of problems with the Civil War. And with that in mind, we are still petitioning and still not getting results. What happens is that along the Florida coast, we are now in I-95 territory. It has always been busy. Now it is busier than ever. Comes the early 1880s, everybody realizes there is no light. This is a dark coast. Ships aplenty are out there, and there is no sentinel. There's no beacon. 102 miles between the two lighthouses. And that's when they got serious. I'm going to hold you for another minute or so, introduce you to another loser. His name is Babcock. He's a talented phony. He was the aide-de-camp to Ulysses Simpson Grant. He goes with Grant to the White House, and he becomes Grant's chief of staff in the White House. And he is in the middle of every corrupt scheme around the Grant White House. He's an instigator. As a matter of fact, he was indicted 3 times. But he was never taken to trial because Ulysses Simpson Grant was loyal to the men who fought with him. And I'm not taking him down. He was loyal to them. And as a result, Babcock goes back to what he did best. He was a good engineer. And he's assigned to build the new Mosquito Inlet Lighthouse. And he does all the right things. He really does. He's fine. But there's always a but. There's always a but. Yes. Oh, here's a great picture. Here's another one. Wait now. Here's the surrender, and Babcock is sitting to the immediate. How are you looking at it? You're okay. To the immediate right of Grant, Babcock is the one with the beard and so on. I mean, that's how close he was to Grant. He was loyal, he was intelligent, he was good for Grant. He went to the White House, he got in trouble and so on and so forth. Grant transfers him back to the lighthouse service because he is a good engineer. Okay. His first idea, wouldn't this have been lovely? How would you like to take your grandchildren to the site of the new Mosquito Inlet? Because that was Babcock's first proposal, was an electric light on a tower 280 feet on the north side of the inlet. And that got a lot of consideration until finally they had problems with it. Electrical supplied and driven and so on and so forth. But this actually is the tower in Astoria in Queens that is still there. Okay, it is now services as as Kennedy Airport in some way, and it's about half of. But yes, this was the lighthouse that was he first proposed here at Mosquito Inlet. Babcock is doing survey sites. He's been on a boat for 6 days outside the inlet, 5 miles outside the inlet. There is a storm that is going on in June of 1883. He's been on that boat for 6 days. He is a general with 2 stars. He's going to say to the captain, and the captain's going to obey him, "Take me in. Get me to land right now." The captain hails a whaleboat. The whaleboat comes up. Babcock and 3 or 4 other men get on the whaleboat and they attempt to go through the bar, over the bar, and into the inlet after all the storms of the 6 days, and the inlet is choppy, and guess who's dead? Babcock. Very soon after, thank goodness, very soon after, we have a man named Smith, Jared Smith, Major of the Army, the Topographical Engineers, U.S. Army. And he's the guy who puts it all together. Here are the plans for the Ponce Inlet Lighthouse. No, it's not solid. Look at it. Isn't it cool? It's a tower within a tower. And they are connected. And you're not going to beat that for stability and strength. It is the way the brick giants are built. This is a brick giant. If you guys are New Jersey bound, this is one of the first brick giants. It's down in Cape May. Same design. Cape Hatteras, St. Augustine, all of the tall brick giants. And we are the last of the brick giants. So literally, the design has gone through about 21 or 22 lights. Okay? Cape Hatteras, the tallest light in the United States, all done this way. And it's Roman. It's Roman engineering. You know the Roman arch?
Ladies and gentlemen, join me in thanking John Mann.